after getting a few players to give a bit of feedback on this level, I found that people don't realize just how much is going on behind the scenes, and often commented that the level had way more objects than they expected. So I thought I'd talk a bit about what makes up this happy little troll level. One thing before we begin. Prior knowledge of the level's gameplay can detract from the experience of playing it, so I would recommend that you give the level a try before watching this video if you have time. The first thing that you see in the level is this starting screen, which only appears on the first attempt, so if I die here, which also changes get ready to get wrecked, it doesn't show up again, as the level entering animation only plays on the first attempt. Now, something important to note is that this is a two-player level. Normally, some text would show up at the beginning of the level telling you which side of the screen the controls for each player are on, but unfortunately the starting screen covered it up, which makes this spike a bit trolly. So if you die to it, I put in a helpful little message to let you know that you're in a two-player level. And if you die to it again, the two-player screen pops up. But wait, why wasn't it there the first time? To answer that, we have to take a quick detour and look at how collision blocks work. When the level starts, this collision block here on the left is moved to the right towards these two blocks, and it hits them at the same time. However, I have it set up such that hitting one of those two blocks will toggle off the other, so the game has to choose one of them to get hit first. It basically orders them in a list. What's strange is that if one of the blocks is moved to the right by at least 10 tile spaces, it gets kicked to the bottom of the list. And the list only gets reset when you exit the level completely. Dying and respawning does not change the list. This means that each one of these sets of collision blocks can keep track of one yes or no across attempts. This one keeps track of whether the player has died to a particular obstacle already, and I reset it at the end of each section so that it can be used for multiple objects. Since anyone going through in practice mode will almost certainly have placed a checkpoint close by. And then these three keep track of what checkpoints the player has hit. We'll see that come into play later. The level might not feel like a troll level yet. So far, we've just had that one spike that you need in two-player mode to get over, and then there's this question mark block that you have to hit in order to become small. The purpose of those first two sections is to train the player, to give them some idea of how the level works, and most importantly, to give them some confidence in their ability to make their way through the level. The key to a good troll level is to keep the player from getting too frustrated. Otherwise, they might rage or quit, and that just wouldn't be fun. So now we enter this wave section. These spikes are really easy to see, so anyone that dies to them should feel particularly silly. And we've fallen into an anti-soft lock. There's nothing hidden that's keeping us from leaving that slope, by the way. The game just does that for some reason. So the point of an anti-soft lock is that not only is this a dead end, but you also have to either complete some challenge in order to die, or else run out of time. Restart button? What's that? To telegraph this to the player, I left a handy little message telling them what to do to get back on track. Now that we've figured out how to avoid the anti-soft lock, we are greeted by a dash orb that turns into a red orb right before you hit it. The reason it does this is that the player needs to hold there, but if there was just a red orb, they'd have a hard time figuring it out. The dash orb tells them to hold, so they get stuck to the ceiling because this game is broken, for a happy little anti-troll, where for a moment you might think you've been had, but you're actually fine. A few jumps later, we have this slope that sucks you down into this spike if you don't jump off of it. However, most players probably won't even fall for that. Unless they get let go kind of fast, they just jump off the slope automatically. Which leads to another important point. A lot of the trolls are designed to be easy to dodge. This is a beginner troll level after all. Killing the player over and over is not the main point. We then hit this green orb, except we actually don't hit it and instead bounce off the back side of the red pad, because that's a good thing you can do. Piranha plants are dangerous, so we jumped over that one, and we get stomped by Mario. Hopefully the player realizes that when Morpheus told us in the previous section that piranha plants are deadly to Mario, he didn't say they are deadly to us. So we pick up the piranha plant and hooray, Mario doesn't stomp us. Now most players will probably avoid this next troll just by their intuition with size portals. However, for some reason, no one's intuition is able to tell them that yellow portals switch gravity to up, not down, and so they jump directly into the spikes and feel like an idiot. This spider portal feels like it should change the camera's position, but it doesn't. You go right through the wave portal because that's how the spider teleport works, and then this orb moves at the last second, but that doesn't matter. It's the same orb, except if you press jump while you're still moving up, you get teleported onto the ceiling and you die a slow and comical death due to a midair jump bug. That yellow portal really is quite attractive, isn't it? And now here you land in between two platforms. By the way, it's a bit of a pet peeve of mine when that happens in other levels. And now a bit of platforming later, we find that we have to turn off the progress bar because when the heavens opened above us, we didn't notice it because the progress bar was in the way. And voila, first checkpoint achieved. In case the hint is hard to understand, a helpful diagram shows us what to do once we die and respawn. So now we hit the practice button to return from the start, and then again to go into practice mode. And we followed the directions by placing a checkpoint at the potion and then dying after the wave portal. And hooray! We enter a new section, which was unlocked by the checkpoint remembering collision blocks. It is a troll face boss fight. And then we immediately get trolled when the practice mode buttons cover up the exclamation points that were hiding the exclamation points that are trying to tell us that the ground was about to move. Now, unfortunately, placing more checkpoints breaks that section, so when that checkpoint appeared, you might be tempted to press X to remove it, and then you get trolled for days because it wasn't a practice mode checkpoint at all. We are now presented with two tantalizing options, except they're both wrong, and if you chose either of them, you get slapped with a muffin. And you really should have known, because it said choose wisely, and the very top and bottom of the screen were marked wisely. By the way, this section is only accessible once you've hit the first checkpoint, so make sure you didn't exit the level by mistake. Alright, now that we have completed that troll boss fight, we go back to the beginning, and a practice mode makes the breakable block unbreakable and allows us to make progress. And we progress until we die to that spike because I swapped the two players when you couldn't see them. Other than that swap, there's nothing that actually changes here until you get to the red jump pad. At which point the practice mode bug again prevents you from going through some breakable blocks and unlocks a new section. Okay, it's not really that simple. The practice mode bug sometimes deactivates for no apparent reason, so I had to hide a checkpoint near the beginning of the level, as well as some zero opacity blocks behind the breakable blocks. Oh look, a question mark block, and it spawns a mantra that blocks the path. You do need to hit this next question mark block though. Ooh, that spike gap really looks tempting, but if you jump through it, it tells you that you're going into another anti-soft lock. Oh no, and then you're fine, and now you're in the anti-soft lock. Don't worry, you just have to spam for 5 seconds, and then you can die and go back to the main route. And then you can respawn and avoid that tantalizing spike gap. You need to jump lightly there because otherwise you get the robot jump pad super jump glitch activates and sends you on a magical journey into some spikes. And then you hit this wave portal despite the really obvious fact that that one space gap should tell you that you probably shouldn't go into wave mode. And then you see, ooh, look, there's a gap under there. Let's try to outsmart the level and drop down into it. And you get trolled for days. So we get tired of jumping it down into gaps, and we hit an invisible Kaizo block, and we get the second checkpoint. This second checkpoint tells us to hold the player 2 button after the first dual portal. So we go back to the start again. We hold player 2 after the dual portal. And we enter the next section, which is a minigame. One button is used to alternate moving left and right, while the other button is used to jump. Now the player will probably do one of two things. Either they will stop holding anything to try to get their bearings straight, in which case they sit there until a airplane takes them on a magical journey into some spikes, or they will just keep holding player 2 and running into the wall until a dispenser drops a burger straight onto their head. The burger is harmless once it lands, by the way. There are some shiny question mark blocks in this section which might make you wary, but there's no need to fear, they just contain coins. Proceeding onward, we see a key and a locked door, so naturally we jump for the key, and there are Kaizo blocks in the way. What else can we do? The only other thing left to do is to hit this POW block, at which point you get trolled for days because all of the coins on screen drop. But the key coin is no longer acquirable because you blocked it with the Kaizo blocks that you hit. So we have to go back to the spikes and try again. Moving onward, after we this time remember not to hit the Kaizo blocks and instead hit the POW, and then collecting the key coin, and passing through the door, we are met by this totally not suspicious launcher. What it does is it moves to the left when you jump near it, so make sure not to jump too high, otherwise you get pushed into this nice big Carl box. And now, having been bodied beyond space and time by all the trolls, we can finally make our way to the end and collect the helpful flagpole and finally beat the level. And don't do what I did and get sent into the Carl box again. Now, we make our way through the minigame, we hit the POW, we collect the key, which unlocks the door, we make a small jump so that the launcher doesn't send us into the Carl box, and we finally collect the flagpole and beat the level, and try unsuccessfully to read the credits as they fly by. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gave you a bit more of an idea of what's really going on behind the scenes on this happy little troll level. I hope you enjoy the rest of your days, everyone. Goodbye.